Little baby Hannah was just 13 months old when her mother, Chloe, took her life, stabbing the baby to death in their home. Why would a mother take her baby's life? What was going on behind closed doors? Prosecutors say it was a non-traditional lifestyle involving polygamy and a cult. Chloe was married to the cult leader, but she was not his only wife. Prosecutors say Chloe was upset that she wasn't getting enough attention and killed her child in an act of murder and attempted suicide fueled by twisted jealousy. The jury agreed and convicted Chloe, and today she was back in court for her sentencing. And what took place? Absolutely jaw-dropping, as the cult leader testifies and the judge hears about Chloe's phone sex calls to her new boyfriend during the murder trial. But first, it was the biggest, most divisive trial of 2024. Karen Reed accused of murdering her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. Prosecutors say she ran him over in a jealous, alcohol-fueled rage and charged her with murder. But the defense painted a different picture, a police cover-up spearheaded by the lead investigator, Trooper Michael Proctor, who framed Karen Reed for murder. The case ended with a deadlocked jury in the 3-count indictment, and both sides are getting ready for the spring 2025 retrial here on Court TV. And today, a big hearing as prosecutors attempt to prevent Karen Reed's dog bite expert from testifying in the new trial. Tonight, we have all the latest. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us. Big hour coming up, and we're beginning with the biggest trial of 2024. Karen Reed up in Massachusetts, back in court today. And today, about the dog bite, or alleged dog bite. This image you're looking at, such an important piece of evidence for the defense, and such an important piece of evidence for Karen Reed's supporters. I spent a lot of time with them up in Massachusetts, and you talk to them about this photo, and they say, it's obvious what this is. This is not from a broken tail light. This is from a dog. Bite, scratch marks. And when you think about the defense story, it's a big part of what they're alleging in all of this. A police cover-up, a murder. There was a dog inside the house. This is the defense story. And she did not run him over. Something happened in the house. He's knocked out, and the dog is going after John O'Keefe. And it's evident from the injuries on his arm. Now, as we get ready for Karen Reed 2025 coming this spring, right here on Court TV, we've got a new prosecutor in town. Very aggressive. Very aggressive, I think, in the way he tries a case, and very aggressive in the pretrial litigation that's taking place. And that's what was happening today, because this new prosecutor wants to ban from the trial one of the witnesses that the defense called in the first trial. Why is that? Why, if a judge found that it was okay for this Dr. Russell to testify, why would Dr. Russell be banned from the new trial? Like, the rules of evidence haven't changed, have they? The doctor hasn't changed, but the prosecutor has changed. And he's aggressive, and he's fighting, and he wants that banned from the trial. Now, I want you to take a look at Dr. Marie Russell. That's her name. You may recall her testimony from the first case, but she was in court today going over her opinion, because this type of motion is based upon, does she have the expertise? Is this something that the jury should hear? The first jury heard it, but it's not a guarantee that the second jury will. Let's listen to precisely what her opinion is.
Do you have an opinion with regard to the nature and source of the wounds on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm?
Yes.
What is that opinion?
Those wounds were inflicted by a dog attack.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
Okay, so let's take another look at that picture, that photo, that image. And, you know, a civilian, a non-expert, we can all have our opinions, and that's basically where the jury will be, and the jury was in the first case. You get to hear what the expert says, you get to use your own common sense, you listen to the arguments. But I think a piece of evidence like this really comes down to what a jury sees, you know, from your own life experience, your own common sense. I don't know if you need an expert, but there was an expert who opined about it. Let's bring in our think tank. They're experts. Joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney Eklund Mercy. Also with us, retired criminal defense attorney Kirk Nurmi, and former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. Great to see everyone tonight. Okay, first we'll do the ink blot test, okay? We'll put that image back up there. Eklund Mercy, what do you see in this image?
I see that the defense has the right to put up a competent and zealous defense, and whatever my opinion is up to the jury. That's a fact question. So the jury should have the opportunity to see what they believe it is. Then prosecution has a beautiful thing called cross-examination. They can cross-examine the expert and they can impeach the expert with another expert. So instead of trying to get rid of one, they could have just brought their own. So I don't know why this motion is up. I don't think it's valid.
I take it you don't have a dog.
No, I don't.
Okay. Kirk Nurmi, what do you see?
I see the real possibility that this is related to animals. It's hard to believe that this was inflicted by a car, by a taillight. The pattern is just inconsistent, and I know there's other evidence demonstrative of the idea that that Mr. O'Keefe was not hit by a vehicle. So to me, these look like scratches. Could it be from a raccoon, some other kind of animal? Yes, it certainly could have, but that's why the defense should be entitled to bring in their expert to proffer the exact origin of these injuries.
Okay, Nima, take a look. What do you see here?
I see scratches, not bite marks. Could be an animal, could be a tail light, could be an animal that isn't a dog. And I agree with Eklund and Kirk. I mean, this really goes to the weight of the evidence, not the admissibility. You want to cross-examine the expert because she's never been an expert in any other case aside from the Karen Reed trial, the first trial, or the fact that her studies date back almost 30 years and they relate to police dogs, not domestic dogs. So, you know, I think there's a lot that you can go after with respect to this particular expert, but I agree, let the defense present their argument, and you know that's what cross-examination and that's what closing arguments are for.
All right, let's put a little more context into all of this. Nicole Albert, homeowner, testified at the trial about their dog, because there was an actual dog in the Alberts' home. Let's take a listen.
You testified that your German Shepherd, Chloe, was also at the house when you arrived home on January 29th, correct?
Yes.
She's a large German Shepherd.
Yep, about 70 pounds.
She's not great with strangers.
I wouldn't say that.
You wouldn't say that it's kind of a poorly worded question. Would you say that she's good with strangers?
I'd say she's fine with strangers.
Fine with strangers. Ms. Albert, Chloe has injured other humans, hasn't she?
Objection.
I'm going to allow that.
In one incident in May of 22, when she got out and was fighting with another dog, the woman whose dog it was tried to break up the two dogs, and while she was trying to break up the two dogs, she got injured.
Ms. Albert, you don't have Chloe anymore, do you?
Nope.
In May of 2022, 4 months after Mr. O'Keefe's death, you got rid of your family dog of 6 years.
Objection.
So is that true? Is that when you got rid of your dog?
I did not get rid of my dog. I rehomed my dog.
your dog is no longer in the Canton area, correct?
No, but I know where she is. She's in Vermont.
Kirk, is it suspicious? Because again, I spent a lot of time with the Karen Read supporters. This is another big issue for them, that the dog suddenly vanishes after all of this, is, as Nicole Albert said, rehomed.
To me, it's highly suspicious. You add this to some of the other things, you know, we heard from Trooper Proctor, some of the other texts that look like confirmation bias, to put it politely, was at play here. You add this onto the fire, right? You say, oh, all of a sudden, you feel this need 4 months later, the investigation before the trial, to rehome this dog. There's no real reason given, right? And the implication, it seems pretty clear. And even in the defensiveness of her questions, to me, it leads me to believe that she's hiding something. And the fact that she knows where the dog is, she's rehomed it, very defensive, throws fuel on the fire, and I can see why Karen Read supporters view it that way.
Nima, what role should the dog play, Chloe, in Karen Read 2025?
I don't think much of a role, because I'm going to be honest, I don't believe that Mr. O'Keefe was killed by the dog and that this was some cover up. Now, I don't think this was murder either. I think the prosecution overcharged this case. I agree with Kirk. Proctor was probably one of the worst law enforcement witnesses ever, but I'm sure if the defense wants to get some sort of court order and do some testing related to this dog, they're going to be able to get it. And if they can prove that evidence was destroyed or get some spoliation or destruction of evidence instruction, they can do that. But so far, they haven't proved that they intentionally got rid of this dog because the dog was the one that mauled O'Keefe.
Do you think the jury wants to see or hear this dog, Eklund, like maybe brought into court?
I don't think so. I think that it's the prosecution's job to prove a case, and they provided that a car part was the culprit for these scratches, and they did not provide evidence to prove that the car did. But you know, with the defense provided some evidence saying that an animal, i.e. a dog, did it. We have evidence that the dog was there. We have evidence that the dog no longer lives there. It's a lot of circumstantial evidence to prove that, you know, to prove against the state's case. It's the state's job to prove it. It's not the defense job to prove the innocence. It's the state's job to prove guilt. And they didn't do that.
All right. Eklund does not have a dog. Kirk, do you or Nima have dogs?
Have you not seen the famous Ron the dog on the internet, Vinny? I post him all the time. I know you follow me. Let's get on the Ron the dog train, buddy. He's about 18 pounds, and he has not mauled anybody.
Okay. So I want you to listen to Brian Albert describe what Chloe was doing when all the EMTs and the cars responded early that morning.
You indicated that Nicole came to bed about 2 o'clock in the morning?
Yes.
Where was the dog?
The dog was in my room.
And she was sleeping on a mat in your room?
Yes.
And that mat is also about 6 feet from the windows?
Yes.
You've already indicated she was barking because she heard people and noises downstairs when you guys came in the house?
Yes.
Okay. And your explanation is that you and Nicole and Chloe, the German Shepherd, all slept through the entirety of that commotion on your front lawn?
Yes.
All right, Kirk, why didn't anyone wake up inside the Alberts' home that night? Their bedroom, I think it's top left, if I'm not mistaken, closest to where John O'Keefe was found. EMTs, police, everybody showing up, milling around right in front. The dog doesn't wake up. The dog doesn't bark. Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, everybody out like a light.
Anyone who's owned a dog or has been around dogs know that defies all logic. It strains credibility, any credibility that they might have. You know, Amazon comes to the door, Vinny, and Ron is going to go off. Anybody comes by, car door shut, you know, all those kind of things can put a dog on alert. The idea that all these people are working on the front of the yard doing this, well, kind of doing this investigation, and then the dog is not reacting to it, like I say, that doesn't make any sense to me. It's Inconsistent with my experience, certainly.
Nima, why aren't the Alberts waking up?
I don't know why they're not waking up. I've had different types of dogs like Kirk's that will bark at anything the wind blows. My wife had a dog when she was a kid. They got a court order to take its voice box out. Ultimately, they had to rehome it as well because they didn't want to do that because the dog would bark so much. And now our dog is 20 years old, couldn't bark if his life depended on it. So, there's all types of dogs. I don't know about Chloe. Again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's certainly possible that they're heavy sleepers and they slept through it.
Okay, we shall see. The judge has not decided yet on this expert. It will continue. In the meantime, we will continue. When we come back, a big sentencing day involving a different Chloe, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, a deep dive into the biggest story in America, the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. How and why are some people calling his alleged killer a hero? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
People wanted answers, and people started locking their doors.
You know what it means. You know what you did, right?
Please hear me out. Please.
I said, OJ, everybody thinks you're guilty.
The court will impose the following sentence as to count 1, malice murder, life in prison with the possibility of parole.
The possibility of parole. She got a break. That's Chloe Driver. She killed her 13-month-old baby successfully, but unsuccessfully killed herself. She was convicted of malice murder and will be eligible for parole, I believe, in her early to mid-50s. So she'll have potentially a second chance at life, a life that her baby does not have. During her trial, she did not testify, she did not speak, she didn't say anything, but she did today at her sentencing. So let's listen to Chloe Driver, convicted baby killer.
I appreciate the opportunity to be heard during this whole process. I am terribly sorry for many things in my life, but most of all for who was lost, and I always will be. Every single day I live with my guilt. I have drowned in sorrow and regret with such an acute awareness of it for so long, I never imagined there would be anything more than that for me. Quite frankly, I didn't believe I deserved anything more than just that. In the past, I genuinely believed I had to die every day for my daughter, to hate myself for my failure in protecting her. But I know now that life goes on whether I suffer or not, so I need to stop taking from it. I know now that I must live for my daughter instead and do the best I can to be kind and loving and giving, because that's exactly what being with Hannah taught me. I see her everywhere, in everything. She lives on and shows me that beauty can be found anywhere, even where I'm going, because I can feel her in my tears. I feel her in my friend's embrace. I see her in a stranger's kindness, in someone's undiluted joy at seeing their loved one. I hear her in people's laughter, and I know her most of all in my family's loyal love for me, even still. No matter how bad our losses, life can be good again, and this is not my end. I accept my punishment with peace, and I want it to be known for every person that has prayed for me, that our Father has heard you, and I have been given a contentment that the world cannot take away. My daughter's memory rests now, so I am able to as well. I want it to be said that no one ever plans to lose control of their own mind. This trial was only a snapshot of my life in mind. It's easy to review the past and say what could have been done differently. It's even easier to say what someone should have done. But that's just it. In the midst of a terrifying situation, you can't actually think. The horror and fear you feel clouds your thinking abilities and disconnects you from reality. So though I may not legally meet the definition of insanity as of today, I know in the bottom of my heart that I was, because I never would have done what I did had it not been for my decompensation. In the end, we can't go back and undo the bad, no matter how much we want to, but we can learn from it and prevent it from happening again. I will continue to seek help for my mental illness because of this. I read once that suffering is cheap as clay and twice as common. What matters, though, is what each man makes of it, and I promise I will make the best of whatever you give me, Your Honor. Thank you.
So she was in a cult, polygamous cult. It wasn't a large cult, but it was, I guess, growing at the time. She stabbed the baby, like murdered her baby. Now, she claimed insanity, and I'm sure there was some level of a mental break there, but not enough for this jury to believe that she didn't know what she was doing was wrong at the time. For anyone to get to the point that you could take the life of a child that looks like that, there's obviously something wrong with you. Doesn't mean you're legally insane, but there's absolutely something wrong with you. Let's bring back in our think tank, Eklund Mercy, Kirk Nurmi, Nima Rahmani. Eklund, this is a Georgia case. You're in Georgia. She got a bit of a break today, the opportunity for parole someday, and I think it'll be in her 50s.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think the issue is that the research isn't in. We don't have enough research on postpartum depression, especially on younger defendants. I have seen clients who spaz out because their baby can't latch. Postpartum depression is a serious thing. It has really made mothers, there are mothers that are suffering daily. And to add the fact that she's in a cult plus her age, these are circumstances layered upon layered upon layered that made this situation. So I think that had they had an expert on postpartum depression, had they had research on what happens when you have postpartum depression, especially at that age, I think she would have had a little bit more leniency from the judge.
Now, Nima, I want to play you something from the prosecutor today, because the prosecutor was not buying all the tears in court today, wasn't buying the remorse, but talked about what was happening during the course of the trial. While we're having this trial about the murder of a little baby, take a listen to what the prosecutor says the defendant, the mother, the killer, was doing.
During the course of her trial, where the rest of us were dealing with the burden and weight of having to advocate on behalf of that child, she's going back to the jail every night and having phone sex with her boyfriend, talking about what size penis she likes, how she likes rough sex, how she wants to be treated like a rag doll, how she wants someone to ejaculate in her mouth. We are all having to watch people fall to pieces over that baby in this courtroom. And she goes back to the jail and can't wait to have phone sex.
Nima, your thoughts?
Vinnie, I thought it was a very powerful argument. She's juxtaposing the defendant's phone sex during trial with the jurors and police officers who testified, who were crying on the witness stand when they were shown pictures of that murdered baby. So you're absolutely right. I agree with Eklund. Clearly, she's mentally unwell, but she's not legally insane. And she got a huge break today. She's probably someone that should spend the rest of her life in prison. I feel no sympathy for her whatsoever. Her motivation was to have this cult leader to herself when he had 2 other wives, apparently. So I don't feel anything for Chloe Driver, and I'm surprised the judge did.
Kirk, what are your thoughts about, in the middle of her murder trial, according to the prosecutor, every night she's going back to the jail to engage in this phone sex with, I guess, her new boyfriend, not her cult leader husband or estranged husband or ex-husband or whatever the status of the relationship is. And was that a fair comment by the prosecutor?
I certainly think it's a fair comment, no doubt about it. And Nima's right, it's very powerful. While these other people are grieving and dealing with the trauma of her actions, ultimately she's enjoying these dalliances on the phone. But You know, you could also make the argument, I guess, that it is consistent with mental illness, right? She's trying to detach from what she's done. She's trying to pretend it didn't happen. At her age, with her mental faculties, that may very well be the case. You know, a lot of female defendants get in these situations. They want to keep men active, keep putting money on their books, things like that. And I think the prosecutor is well told to kind of point this out. And whether she got a break or not, I think that's something we're going to see 30 years down the road, because if we see continued activity like this, I think her opportunity for actual getting parole is going to be deeply lessened.
Eklund, you know, I always wonder what defendants do, you know, in the middle of their trial, the ones that are in custody. This is a little different.
It's not. We call it jail love. What happens is we have a lot of defendants. You know, the jury sees a person, but it's just their body. Their minds are completely somewhere else. In order to not implode, sometimes I have seen defendants just disconnect. And just like Kirk said, sometimes people do what they need to do to get money on their books, and it happens more often than not, especially with a high-profile case like this in which families may not be so willing to help. She may have just seen an opportunity to get some type of communication or some type of love. Because, you know, especially when they know they're going to go to prison, they try to optimize on all of the time, on all of the county time, and what they can do there.
Yeah, a bit of a coping mechanism. Eklund Mercy, Kirk Nerman, Nima Romani staying with us. When we come back, a big part of this case was the fact that she was part of this polygamous cult. Well, the cult leader, the father of the murdered baby, was in court and was speaking. We'll play it for you when we come back.
Chloe Alexis Driver wasn't a victim. She had the most power in our group. It was called her fits. I don't know what kind of a sentence would help her.
Well, I was driving down the road to go get some lunch, and I seen these two guys chasing a young girl. So they were right in the middle of the, like on the side of the road. I made a U-turn, came back. I wanted to see if she was okay because, I mean, she was running from them. And then they had got a hold of her and was dragging her back to the apartments that were right there.
And you recall her yelling certain things to you?
Yeah, help me. They're trying to kidnap. They got my daughter.
Okay.
Don't leave me. Call my mom. What's his name? Benjamin. The dark-headed gentleman is the one that grabbed her again.
Okay, let's not forget this part of the trial. You know, Chloe Driver, apparently at this moment when this Good Samaritan comes by, is trying to escape from the house. And the cult leader is one of the two who brings him back, along with this man, Jason Spillers. Spillers on the left, cult leader on the right. So, big part of this case. You know, talking about what was happening to Chloe Driver, what her situation was. From the prosecution perspective, plays into the motive. From the defense, it's part of what happened to her mentally in her life. So let's take a listen now to the cult leader, who is also the father of the little baby, the victim in the case.
To measure the impact and loss privately, I'm a very hard individual. I've lived a very particular life in countries that are not here to get knowledge and find things. I'm not a good model for initial reactions. In other words, I'm extremely stoic. That doesn't mean there wasn't 13 months after, and every private moment when I screeched like a frightened 7-year-old girl, where I sat for 3 months in a van just screaming and screaming and screaming that this woman believed that she was entitled to take my daughter's life out of this world because she stopped believing in having a moral consciousness and the duty to help humanity, because she believed the girls who were with us, not that she didn't believe in polygyny, she didn't believe in the girls who were with us. She believed they were reprobate, second class. She believed she put in more energy and people did not reciprocate to her, and she quit around June 3rd, 2020 and planned Hannah's death because she planned to exit the world and take her daughter with her. She may have even abused her and felt that there was some issue on a phone call between taking the girls to Connecticut when she said, "If you don't get your ass back down here to the South as quickly as you possibly can, I will throw this baby on the floor because I'm tired of her screaming and I can't get her to go to sleep the way you do," which was a beautiful segue that I love spending time with my daughter, putting her to sleep. It was like my job to put her against my heart. We spent lots of time rocking and going into sleep, and Chloe just had triggers from being raped and abused as a child, suffocated and jumped on by a drunken Eric driver who caused her to be triggered by sleep. And she doesn't even know it herself. I apologize. I'm very emotional.
I understand, but the purpose of this hearing is about Hannah and the loss of Hannah and the impact.
And this is the impact on me.
That's the leader of the polygamous cult. Joining me right now, retired police commander, religious cult expert, host of the podcast Profiling Evil, and author of the book Deceived, Mike King. Mike, what's your take on this leader, Benjamin?
You know, Vinny, I was really taken back just by the way he came into courtroom with the eyeglasses on his coat pocket that are shaped in the shape of a heart. Wearing a blue blazer with a sweatshirt underneath it. I mean, the whole thing, I wondered what it was and how much time he may have spent trying to put together whatever the ensemble ended up being. But what I was hearing, Vinny, is an authoritative, instructive, in charge kind of person. And it gave me insight into the kinds of preachings that must go on in that community when he's sharing whatever the gospel is that he believes in, or when he's talking about the God in which they believe in. It might be a way of coping with some kind of overwhelming grief, but I see a self-proclaimed prophet who sees himself kind of with this moral responsibility to tell the world that somebody went outside of whatever his guidance was and committed this. And I don't know what happened on June 3rd, Vinny. I don't know if you do, but June 3rd was really significant. What was that all about?
I want you to listen also to Jason Spillers, who was another member of the cult, talking about one of their practices. And I want you to give us a little perspective on all this, because apparently this is a big part of who they were.
Were there sort of healing practices or things that you all did for your bodies that were not traditional?
I mean, like what?
Like drinking your own urine?
Sure.
Okay.
I've been drinking my urine daily for 4 years.
Okay.
All right. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I remember when that testimony came out, Vinny, and I had a hard time then. I'm having a hard time now, not laughing a little bit, but it reminds me so much of behaviors that I've seen in cults, especially when it comes down to this idea that if you're righteous enough or if you're religious enough, you don't need things like doctors or standardized health care or other kinds of things because God is going to take care of you. And I reflect back often on this one predator in central Utah who we were trying to get on the sex abuse of a child. And he was telling people in his polygamous community that they couldn't go and see a doctor. And I found it interesting because one night he had a heart attack. And by golly, he was the first to get out the door and head to the emergency room. And so I think it's really interesting how these people will tell others that their righteousness is what's leading either to their punishments, the bad decisions they're making, and it all boils down to they're not following whatever the God is they believe in is telling them to do. And boy, isn't that a great, easy way out of everything, is to blame it all back on people when things go wrong.
So let's go back now to Chloe Driver. She's going to be spending at least 30 plus years in prison, at least, perhaps the rest of her life. How do you think she does as a former member of this cult in a prison setting?
You know, it's kind of interesting because the women in the book Deceived were very much in charge inside of the cult. They still worked under the authoritative leadership of a man, the self-proclaimed prophet. but they were very strong, and he represents her as being very strong, and she apparently had some leadership roles within the organization. But what we found with those women who went to prison, and we ended up putting 12 people in prison, that they went in and started preaching their belief system to people within the prison, and they found all these people who had big old open ears that were looking for something else to make their life a little better. And as we monitored the phone calls that were going on in the prison, they were making calls out on a regular basis saying, I've now converted this person who's getting ready to come up on parole, and when they're released, let's give them a place to live. And so this thing really scares me, Vinny, because there is systemic problems associated with it.
She's young, relatively young, right? Looking at that part of this, what sort of a role do you think that played in everything that happened here? From falling, for this guy, becoming a part of this polygamous cult, having a child at a young age, and then getting to the point where she takes the child's life and unsuccessfully attempts to take her own life.
Yeah, number one, she bought off on the ideology when she was young, probably enamored by this self-proclaimed prophet that we listen to today. And because of that, once she started getting into the ideology and the belief system, if she ever questioned it or started to back away from it, she probably was ostracized, and the love bombing and all the attention went to other people. And so they will come back into play with this thing. And so what is to seemingly normal people, criminal events or things that are wrong, they seem to justify over time in order to stay within the graces of the group. So now as she goes into, for instance, the prison setting, she's facing a real uphill challenge because she's murdered a child. And, we think that child sex abusers have a hard time. Child murderers have a really difficult time, whether it's on the women's side of the prison or the men's side. So there's going to be some real adjusting going on. And the lawyer said today she's matured a lot. Well, she's got a lot more maturing to do.
Mike King, always great to have you on, and your expertise. Really appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Vinny.
All right, back with our think tank, Eklund Mercy, Kirk Nurmi, Nima Rahmani. Nima, what role do you think the fact that the cult leader came in today and presented himself the way he did may have impacted this sentencing? I mean, he's there for victim impact, but I'm wondering if he actually helped the defendant today.
I think it probably hurt the prosecution and helped the defendant. You're absolutely right. Obviously, he's a victim. He has the right in any state to come and give a victim impact statement. But to come across the way he did, the arrogance, the pompousness, I didn't find him someone who was particularly likable. And you have the defense pointing the finger at him as the reason that she was emotionally abused, sexually abused under this man's control in this cult. I think it made Chloe Driver more sympathetic purely because of how bad of a witness he was during sentencing.
Eklund, what'd you think of the leader?
I triggered. Do you know how many domestic violence victims that I represent? And the moment that they get their lick back, the moment that they fight back, the abuser comes and is the best witness, and it happens often. And, the fact that we call him a cult leader should signify he shouldn't be on anybody's witness stand. I can't. Cult leaders are known for their charisma as well as their manipulation, and he really showed that on the stand.
Kirk, it was interesting to see him, so you get I think a better flavor for what Chloe Driver's life was like.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And some of the things that have already been said were certainly spot on. You really get an idea of the authoritarian control he had over her. Now, calling this a cult and some of the things that Mike said, I think were interesting. But I think the difference here and what might give Chloe Driver a chance for parole is that she wasn't born into this. I mean, in Arizona, we had Warren Jeffs and his cult, and people were born into it. This girl wasn't born into it. She was brought into it. Maybe she's going to get a chance to see the error of her ways. The structure of prison might help her kind of understand life in a different way, although she's still going to be under authoritarian rule to a certain sense, and really get a sense of how misguided she was and how she needs to deal with some of these issues if she's going to have that chance 30 plus years down the road.
All right, Kirk Nurmi, Nima Rahmani, Eklund Mercy, thank you so much. Folks, quick programming note. The cult leader, Benjamin, the cult leader, father of the victim, Hannah Driver, is going to join Julie Grant tomorrow morning on opening statements. I'm setting my alarm. You need to set your alarm. That's going to be fascinating. You'll hear his thoughts on the trial and Chloe Driver's sentencing. And obviously, you want to catch it tomorrow morning at 8. When we come back, something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, Luigi Mangione is now a household name, an accused killer who was caught with the alleged murder weapon and a manifesto. What do his writings reveal? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, coming up next, only on Court TV.
A carefree couple living life in their converted van.
But did his dark side lead to first-degree murder?
The van life and death murder trial. Weekday mornings on Court TV.
Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board. Oh, a guilty plea. Do you recognize? That's Morgan Wallen. A little bit of a haircut. Pleading guilty. He was arrested in Nashville. Yeah, we're talking Tennessee here in April after he threw a chair from a rooftop bar. Some really dangerous behavior, by the way. And it wasn't somebody's problem. It was his problem. Take a listen to the judge.
I understand that you are entering a plea of guilty to 2 counts of reckless endangerment. You will receive a sentence of 11 months and 29 days, all suspended except 7 days incarceration, which will be served at a DUI education center. The remainder of that sentence will be served on supervised probation. These counts run consecutive to each other, that is, one after the other, for an effective sentence of 2 years. And the sentence is pursuant to judicial diversion, which we will talk about a little bit later. Is this your understanding, sir, of what you're pleading guilty to and the punishment being imposed?
Yes, Your Honor. We talked about the formal conditional guilty plea, but yes, he understands that.
All right, but those are the offenses that he understands he's pleading guilty to and the sentence, which is a 2-year sentence.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, a couple things I thought you should know about the sentence. One, there's a few different parts to it, right? So on the one hand, he has to take care of the program and work it through and do it kind of like one thing at a time. But when he does that, if he successfully completes it, it can all be washed away off his record. Hopefully he straightens things out, because that's, again, dangerous behavior. All right, I need your help. A child needs your help. Take a look at your television screens. This is Yasmin Ileana Avilas, missing from Baltimore, Maryland since December the 9th. Yasmin is 16 years old, so please take a look at her face, at her picture, distinctive hair. If you see Yasmin, pick up the phone, make the call, make a difference. You can call 911, you can call 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Baltimore City Police. That phone number is on your screen right now. Let's see if we can get Yasmin to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. We're going to take a deep dive into the case of Luigi Mangione, the so-called CEO killer suspect / defendant. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.